So, man, 1987, let's jump into it. What a crazy year it is. I guess we should start off, at the beginning of the year. I should mention we're going to be using a little bit of Torch. We're going to be using a little bit of the Observer as we break down a really crazy year. Now, you're still relatively new to the wrestling scene. Of course, you grew up in the business, but how long do you think, we'll call it January of 87, you've actually been active in the ring in front of fans?
Conrad, this is what is, and as time goes on, April of 86 is when I had my first match.
Right.
And I was at the very, March Madness. I was at the tail end of basketball season. So my plan was, I thought in 87 I would be playing my sophomore year of basketball. And, like you said, growing up in it, I hear the stories when my old man sent a bunch of talent to Watts and Crockett and Flair in and out and just the different territories. And I referenced a couple of weeks ago going back to my dad's bedroom when he had the big C band when I was 12, 13, 14 years old, watching the old Madison Square Garden shows and all that, always being a wrestling junkie. But in 1987, just how little I really was aware of what a monumental year it was in the entire business. I was this guy that was getting an opportunity at Memphis TV and working 7 days a week. And, just kind of getting that grind and, just all the things going on. But being in the wrestling office, because my dad would say, hey, you just need to come up, get you sit in the office, sit over there. We'll have a little bit of booking meetings. I want you to understand the finance part of it and the town settlement. I was getting my college education in the wrestling industry and hearing these different phone calls and hearing the feedback. And I used to, this is another thought, Conrad, than when I had reading this research. I can remember, because we had the office phone. It was kind of behind my dad's desk, but if he was outside or going across the house or getting more tobacco, if he wasn't right by the phone, he wanted me to answer the phone. And from time to time, I'd pick it up and I think it was JArrett Enterprises, how we answered the phone. And if it was Lawler, he would mess with me or whatever it may be. But I knew when he was going to be talking to Lawler, I'm like, okay, I better go get me 3 or 4 magazines. This is going to be a long call. I'm just trying to think others that, different wrestlers and all this. So that's how this was really supposed to be my sophomore year in college. Well, this was kind of a mashup of my true in 1987 introductory to the business side of things. Because in 86, it was blowing and going and first match and just trying to get my feet under me. When 87 and I don't say got a rhythm, but a little bit, he's like, hey man, I want you to start coming around the office. And so that's what we did. I certainly did Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and some Thursdays every week. And we'd get in from Memphis 2 or 3 in the morning. He wanted me at the office at 10 and to have already worked out. So anyway, Conrad, I say all that to say, I love reading the research. I hope this podcast has, I'm going to be very honest. I hope it has lots of downloads because these kind of podcasts to me are fascinating that we're going to talk about all these different things. And I'll give you my spin on where I was at mentally, what I was thinking about, the feedback I heard, the conversations that I heard. But 87, I'm not sure. And as far as a transitional year, this is the year of the business really, really transitioning from the end of the territories.
Yes.
Period. The radical change in the business is 1987.
To put into context what 1987 is going to hold later in the year, WrestleMania 3 is going to be a bonanza. And that's going to happen in late March and early April of the year. But this is right smack dab in the middle of Vince trying to expand and go national. We know about all the success that he had with Rock and Wrestling and MTV and the War to Settle the Score and the original WrestleMania. Maybe he, as Jeff would say, got out over his skis a little bit in WrestleMania 2. What's better than one big city WrestleMania? What if there were 3? One in New York and one in Chicago and one in California? Well, now we're back to the basics and we're going to run a super show. Now, we know that Dusty Rhodes has ran super shows before with Starcade and he was using a lot of closed circuit. But Vince McMahon is about to become not only the king of pay per view, but the king of arena business. And it's happening in real time in 1987. And I know when you go back and you think about young Jeff Jarrett in January of 87, he's 8 or 9 months into his in ring career. He's got the blinders on and just focusing on getting better. You're not really concerning yourself with responsibilities that would have landed on the shoulders of your father about running the territory and things like that. But now I wonder, with the benefit of hindsight, because when I talked to David Crockett and certainly his brother Jim before he passed, they both agreed that 1986 was like the high watermark, the most success they had had in their territory. And now 87 is when a lot of territories are challenged. We know that later this same year, on the heels of WrestleMania 3, Watts is just going to cash out and he's going to sell his promotion and territory, what's left of it, to Jim Crockett. When you think back about your dad and Lawler and Memphis in January of 87, do you think they felt like, hey, we're riding high from 86? We got to pull the nose up on this thing? Do they think they're insulated from McMahon's national expansion the way other territories weren't as much? Or if you had to sort of put yourself in your dad's shoes with the benefit of hindsight, how do you felt he felt about his territory business in January 87? Was he bullish?
We talked off and on through the years a lot about this. To give you a little, okay, where did I start on this? But yeah, to say bullish, and he knew the fight that he was in. I think he candidly thought, and it depends on what year. He's got a lot of, I get my delusional optimism probably from him in a lot of ways, but he really, really looked at, and in 86, business obviously was starting to go down, but here's what he kind of would always kind of land back on in those years. You didn't have overnight ratings. You didn't get the ratings from Saturday morning TV on Monday. They used to call it the book, a book of ratings, which would come out twice a year. And I know there's different things, but they took a May book and they took a November sweeps month, and then it evolved. But ratings books were kind of on monthly average, or they took them individually, but they would just give you a boatload of data. But I say all this to say Memphis ratings in 87 were still astronomically high. Wave TV in Louisville, great. Evansville, really good. I'll get into the kind of the Nashville ratings, because we went from a U station to the ABC affiliate. Anyway, ratings were still really good. Lawler was still rocking and rolling. The talent, if you will, and I'm a young kid listening, was still good. He just knew that, okay, we're going to fight Vince when he comes in once a year or twice a year or maybe 3 times a year. We just got to be prepared for that. But yes, he was absolutely bullish on it, and kind of, I don't want to get too far ahead, but each individual territory, I can remember him saying through phone calls of real time in 87, but also, years later in, I don't know, early 90s in conversations, or even late 80s after this, or early 90s. And he would just see, all right, see how this happened, see that happen. Because as we're going to touch on, 87, January of 87 and January of 88, the industry that my father knew had radically changed. I mean, radically changed. So real-time conversation, real-time feedback that I got to hear. And then as the years went on, hearing all that, and the partnership between Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett, I got to understand, didn't realize it at the time, but I really got to understand it so much more in 87. I knew they were business partners in 86, and I knew they were in 85. And, the golden age, or the golden age of the territories, 80 through to 85, 86, was, everybody was making money. But 87, my dad was definitely to the long way around. And I know I got granular there. 87, he was still bullish.
Well, you had to be bullish if you were at all getting handed sheets from the Observer, because on the Observer that comes out on January 19th, there's reader pages, just like there would be in a newspaper back then, where subscribers would write in and tell Dave what they were thinking and what they saw and what their opinions were. You got to remember, folks, this is the late 80s. It's not like you could send Dave a text or you could send him a tweet. And back then, nobody, and I mean nobody, wanted to call long distance. So you put a damn stamp in the mail and you send it off and you hope you got a response. Well, we got rewritten here in the Observer.
It's just crazy.
John from McKeesport, Pennsylvania, wrote to Dave and said, after seeing my first Championship Wrestling Association show in Memphis on December 28th, I believe there is someone there better than Jerry Bryant. Bryant is good, but he's only about 5'9" or 5'10". The real rising star of the promotion is Jeff Jarrett. He reminds me of Sam Houston a year and a half ago in the way he takes bumps. This promotion should do okay with Jarrett on top when Lawler retires. I would recommend Memphis as a great place to vacation and see. There are a lot of interesting things to do there besides seeing the wrestling. Now, I know that we've talked about, the way the dirt sheets were perceived once upon a time back in the day. But does a positive note like this, do you even find out about this, or did you just hear about this for the first time during our research?
Well, it was the Joel Good. It's the trips of fans that would come down from the Northeast. And if you had, if Conrad, if you were to ask me, and you're not, but I'm just saying, hey, Jeff, what's your earliest memories of those folks that took bus trips? My absolute first memory would be my grandmother coming to me and saying, come here, kind of sternly. And she'd say, now we have a group of fans that are coming down here. And she would kind of give me the speech on, how to treat them. Look, these are diehard fans and da 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 da. She was so appreciative of a busload of fans coming. That was my first introduction. And no, I wouldn't have ever heard of this at the time or one of those deals. But no, it was pretty cool to me because that was, look, we take everything for granted now because X and Instagram, and it's all age of instantaneous information. But folks come down, and my grandmother's giving them the red carpet, and they've all got ringside seats, and we're going to talk to them, and we're going to do, hey Jeff, will you sign a few autographs for these folks? It was really a pretty cool treat. And this is when I read the research, and this is one of the readers, I was just like, wow, way back, how the business has evolved. I'll just say that.
Let me ask you, we haven't spent any time talking about him, but I love that John gave a shout out here to Jerry Bryant. What can you tell us about Jerry Bryant?
So Jerry, from Memphis, tragically, he passed away of ALS. But he was a good buddy. Well, I don't say good buddy, but he broke in the Memphis area and was a bump taken. Later in his career, he teamed with Big Lou Winston, and they were, I'll say this diplomatically, so they were at the very tip top of that. I don't want to call them enhancement guys, but they were Memphis TV and just worked the Memphis territory because Jerry didn't work territories, didn't ever leave Memphis, but he was, and this will kind of imagine this, a professional wrestler being an incredible car guy. He, car salesman, general manager. I mean, he ended up running multiple dealerships, I believe, but I mean, he was in the car business and really, really successful. And then I don't know if they were originally buddies or became buddies, but him and Lawler were tight, and a Memphis guy, but he just had a easy knack. He's, as far as in-ring work, Conrad, I mean, I can remember as a kid, as a rookie or first couple of years, me getting in the ring with him. He would teach me so much and talk me through matches and was really good to me. And again, a bump taking heel, like no other. He was really good.
Sadly passed away in December of '89 from Lou Gehrig's disease is what we used to call it back then.
Yep.